with us on what is in the Netherlands a very nice day for the time of year. So we'll talk about the PPE program, Politics, Philosophy and Economics at Utrecht University. And my name is Dr. Martijn Huismans. I'm a core teacher in PPE, and I'm at the School of Economics here at Utrecht University. And with me I have...
Well, I'm Madeline, and I'm a first year student in the PPE program.
Yeah, so, let's get to the clicker. So you've already seen our pictures by now. And so we'll talk today about PPE. And the program for today is, we'll talk first about PPE, about its features. Then Madeline will talk about student life in Utrecht and PPE. And then there will be time for questions. So we'll talk about for 30 minutes. Then there's a live Q&A at which you can answer questions. And everything will be recorded and will be available online. So if you're here with us today, you'll get the link later on if you want to watch again. And so at the bottom of the screen, you see 3 boxes with some key dates that might be interesting for you, but those will reappear at the end of the presentation. So let's dive in. Maybe, Madeline, you want to talk about the 6 things we want to highlight today?
Yeah, I'll start. Well, PPE is an interdisciplinary program, so that means that we have 4 different disciplines, which are economics, politics, philosophy, and history. And there we'll be focusing on those 4. It's an international program. We have 16 different nationalities this year. It's an intense and ambitious program. It definitely keeps you guys busy. So if you're up for a challenge, this program is great for you. It's a small-scale program. We have a close community with 75 students each year. And it's a selective program, of course. And it's a program with a price because, well, this is a special program, so it's a higher price.
Yeah, so we'll talk about all of those 6 things in a bit more detail now. So first, what is interdisciplinarity? So we have in Utrecht 4 disciplines in PPE. So there's politics, philosophy, economics, plus history. And this is also a bit of a unique feature in Utrecht PPE. So PPE is a type of program that has existed for a while now. It started in Oxford in the 1920s, and some other places have programs in PPE. But what is unique to Utrecht is that we also have history as a 4th discipline, and that we try to integrate the disciplines as much as possible. And so hence the interdisciplinarity. So it means that we take knowledge, we take methods, debates, insights from the different disciplines, and we try to apply them to given societal problems. And to make this more clear, I'll give an example of a problem that we study in PPE. So you see the picture of emissions from a factory, and a problem that we have in the world is global warming. So this affects everyone in the world. Another problem that's important is poverty, and this affects some places, it happens all throughout the world, but in some places it's more prevalent than in others. And what is tough about these 2 problems is that they're also, to some extent, interlinked. So if you think about poverty, what can you do to combat poverty is you stimulate economic growth. Unfortunately, what tends to happen is when countries develop economically, they start emitting more greenhouse gases and more pollutants. And so by solving one problem, you're making the other problem worse. And there's obviously scientific aspects to this discussion, but also the 4 disciplines in PPE have a lot to say about this. So economics obviously learns you about economic development and what it means for pollution. But politics is also very important. So when countries come together to negotiate, like in the Paris Agreement, reductions in greenhouse gases, there's each of these leaders of their countries face also a domestic electorate that they have to satisfy. And philosophy is also important in thinking about these 2 problems, because if you think about poverty, there's an issue of justice right now, justice between the rich and the poor in the world. But if you think about global warming, pollution, there's an aspect of intergenerational justice, because if we're polluting right now, and if we're exacerbating global warming, then it's going to affect future generations. And this is a fairly complex problem philosophically also. Are we more concerned with justice right now or justice across generations, and how do we think about that? So in that sense, philosophy can help. And history can help because when looking at history, we can study what solutions states, for instance, have found in the past to tackle common problems. So now we'll have a look at the program. So Madeline, you're a first-year PPE student. We started in September 3rd. Which courses are you taking now?
Well, now I'm taking the major debates in global economic history and comparative democratic institutions. And these are the two courses for politics and history.
Yeah. So you see there's 3 rectangular boxes on this slide, and they cover the PPE program. And so as Madeline said, she's now taking a course in economic history and in democratic institutions. And so these are 2 courses from 2 disciplines. And in the first year, you're going to get from each of the 4 disciplines 2 courses. So in the second period, which will start in November, for instance, I'll be teaching in microeconomics, and there will be a course on ethics and public policy, so an economics course and a philosophy course. And then in the third and the fourth period, there's 4 more courses, so politics and policy making, macroeconomics, so this is another economics course, political philosophy, and the history of politics, so another history course. So that's the first program where you get a disciplinary grounding, what we call it. So you get courses in each of the 4 disciplines, but already in the first year we try to integrate them. So we have a crash course program where we talk about problems like the gender wage gap we talked about last week. From the 4 disciplines to already try and integrate them outside of the lecture context, basically. So moving on to the second year. In the second year, you'll make a choice. So you'll specialize or you'll study one topic in more detail. And we have 4 packages of each 4 courses. So one is sustainability, one is democracy under threat, one is markets and regulators, and then we have the welfare state. And so you choose one of these packages and you will get 4 courses on that topic, but again, from the 4 different disciplines. And aside or in parallel to that, you also have courses that will stimulate your professional skills and your general academic skills. So you'll have a course on quantitative research skills and on qualitative research skills. And then you have a course on reasoning and argumentation, and knowledge and debate. And so these first 2 research skill courses will help you do research and projects for the package that you're doing. So for instance, if you're doing markets and regulators, you might do a project to study a certain regulatory policy. You might want to do a statistical analysis, and then you can use the knowledge that you have from the quantitative research course to conduct that analysis. So that's the second year where you specialize in one of the tracks and you get more academic skills. And then we move on to the third year where you see the purple boxes, and those are basically very free what you can do there. So you could study abroad, you could do an internship, but you could also take courses in one of the disciplines. So let's say that you come to Utrecht, which we would like, obviously. You study PPE, you take the courses, and then you say, well, actually, I find that I'm very interested in political science and governance. Then you could take in those 6 courses, take many courses on political science. And that will then qualify you, or could help you qualify for the master's here in Utrecht or in another place in that discipline, so in political science or economics or philosophy or history. And then the 2 brown little blocks is your thesis. So you'll also be doing relatively independent research projects using the skills that you've developed throughout the 3 years. So that's the program. So PPE is also an international program. Maybe, what's your experience there, Madeline?
Well, my experience is we're surrounded by a lot of different nationalities, 16 to be precise. And it's very interesting because you learn to look at global issues through their eyes and perspective. So you actually gain different insights than you would with only Dutch students, for example. And of course, it's great to have such different influences.
Yeah. I really like personally also that we're an international program with students from many different nationalities. And that also means that when we're teaching, we'll take care not to focus just on Dutch problems or Dutch solutions, but we're also looking at global problems and global solutions to societal challenges. Also, in the teacher, I'm actually not Dutch, although my name probably looks very Dutch and is very common. I'm from Belgium, for instance. We also have a teacher from Brazil and from Bulgaria and so on. And one thing that I also really like is when I'm walking around in the PPE building is that I hear students also talking English most of the time. And this is really nice, and it helps also integrate students from different backgrounds, and that's really cool.
We have the unwritten rule to always talk English with each other, so no one is left out.
Okay, so here we want to talk a bit about PPE being special in the sense that it's intense and ambitious, and it's small scale and community based. So intense and ambitious on several dimensions. For instance, we have more class hours, so more contact hours. So if you study PPE, you'll have seminars in smaller groups where you'll discuss problems, where you'll work in small groups on assignments, and you have more of those hours than in many other programs. We have an intensive skills training program, so integrated in the courses, there is a program that will train you on your professional skills like presenting, collaborating, integrity, and also on your academic skills like reading, academic texts, writing. And so to stimulate that, and then there's interdisciplinary skills, so to have disciplinary grounding, to integrate these different disciplines, then at the end, you'll also build a portfolio. And we've just done a first step in that portfolio, right?
Yes, we have.
Or you're working on it?
I'm still working on it, but we're starting on it now.
Yeah. And so there's also an extracurricular program where we have, for instance, guest speakers coming to talk about current issues. And what is the goal of that? So that's what you see at the bottom of the slide, is that we want to develop you as into a well-rounded person, basically. So we're not just trying to feed you knowledge of economic theory or a philosophical theory, but really to develop you broadly as a person. And so with the portfolio, we're also trying to stimulate your ability to reflect on yourself and to set goals for yourself and to grow on areas that are not typically or just narrowly intellectual and academic. And so it's also a community-based program. So yeah, what's in the picture?
Well, we have our own building in the picture. It's very unique to have from a university as a bachelor program to have your own building. So that's very great. We have a very close community at PPE. So we'll always be studying after classes with each other or having lunch. So that's great.
Yeah, so we have the Descartes building, which is ours for PPE. And there's a common room where students can study or have lunch. There's a quieter study room. And so we as teachers are also present there regularly. And we have extracurricular events there, so debates. For instance, the students organized a movie and pizza night.
Yes, we did.
Maybe you'll talk about more later. And so we really want to stimulate this sense of community. So not just you go to one class, you go home, or wherever, and then you go to another class, and that's not what we want. We want really to have a sense of community and to run into each other regularly and to work on projects together and so on. So I see people asking questions, so that's very good. You can answer questions throughout the presentation. We have a team also right now that is logging these questions, and then we can have them in the Q&A. And so what we also want with this community is that you can learn from each other and from the teachers. And we also have a broader sense of community, so where we want to stimulate you to do social outreach. And so in particular, when we're thinking right now about the packages, the thematic packages in the second year, like sustainability, in the fourth course of those packages, we want to stimulate you to do an outreach project to society. And so there's an interlinkage between the fact that it's intense and ambitious, and we want to learn you a lot, and the fact that we have this community philosophy where you learn from each other and you give back to the community. And so by doing that, that's also part of making you grow as a person, but also by giving you the necessary intellectual baggage, we want you to be able to contribute more to the community, basically. So as we said, it's a selective program. So how many students are there right now?
We have around 75 students now.
Yeah, exactly. And this is what we aim to do. So we want to be very selective in order to be able to have this community aspect. And so also next year, we'll select 75 students. So it's not a program where you can just enroll and then come. So you have to put in some effort to submit your application. Did you spend a lot of time on your application?
I did. It takes a lot of time because you have to write a motivation letter and get recommendations and do your best for grades, of course. So it takes time. Yeah.
So as Madeline is saying, what do we look at, or what do we want you to submit if you want to apply for PPE? We're going to look at your grades, so your academic performance. You'll write a motivation letter where we have more detailed instruction on the website. And we'll ask you for a recommendation letter, a profile test, which sort of assesses your personality. And then we'll do a first screening of that with a couple of, with the admissions committee, which I'm also a part. And then we'll select a given amount of students, and then we'll conduct interviews. And so what are so this is what you have to do to apply. And then there are certain requirements that we have. So if you're a Dutch student, you need a VWO diploma. You need math A or B. So you need some knowledge of math, in particular because we'll do economics. But don't worry if you think, okay, I'm not a super genius at math. It's not the foundation of the program, but in economics you'll need some math. But we're teaching you economics also specifically to this PPE group. So there's no other students, and we also make sure that we teach it in a way that is accessible to students who have some knowledge in math, basically. And as we said, it's an international program, which we think is a nice feature, but it also means that you need a good working knowledge of English to participate in the community, but also to take your exam and so on. And so for Dutch students, we've decided that you should have at least an 8 out of 10 on English. So if you're non-Dutch, and you can find the details on the requirements if you're non-Dutch, and then we hope also especially to have you on the website. So you'll need a diploma that's comparable, a high school diploma to what is VWO in the Netherlands. You need also some math and an English language test, for which you have to, unfortunately, you'll have to pay yourself. And what is it that we look for in the selection procedure? So you submit this file, right, with the motivation letter, with your grades, so on, with the proof of your English knowledge, math. Also, we'll look at your cognitive skills, but this is not it's not only about selecting the best quote-unquote students. No, it's also about fit. We also want to select students that we think will be happy in the program, that will thrive in the program, and that will enrich the program for other students in other aspects. So it's also about, your willingness to engage in this community and these types of things. And so that will also assess through your motivation letter, for instance. So unfortunately, the program, since it's a special program, so it's small scale, it's intensive, there's more contact hours. We have our own building that was especially renovated. Because I remember you told me something about one of the breakout rooms, right? Yeah, we actually have a fat boy room as one of the breakout rooms to be more creative. So that's very cool. I mean, which university has its own fat boy room? Yeah. So if you don't know what a fat boy is, it's like a bean bag. So it's a bag full of little, I'm not sure what's in it. Yeah. Balls, yeah. And you can sit on it, and it sort of gives this loungy atmosphere. And so we use it during small group seminars to stimulate other ways of thinking and interacting. You can write on walls with special wall paintings. So that's very cool too. Yeah. So we have all of these cool features, And then unfortunately that translates into a higher price than typical Dutch programs. So if you're an EU student, the price is about 4,000 euros for next year. And if you're a non-EU student, Dutch law obliges us to be cost covering. If you're a non-EU student, then it's about 10,000 euros. If you're an EU student, we have 8 scholarships available. And these are meant really to stimulate diversity in the program. So if you want to apply for those, one of those scholarships, that will help you, then you'll find the information on the website basically, and you should point out in your application how you'll contribute to diversity in the program. And so, okay, this is the unfortunate news, I guess, on the price, but on the plus side, at the bottom of the box, so for first-year students, there's also a Dutch law that typically your first-year tuition is halved. Okay, so we've talked about the 6 main features. Now we want to talk a bit about life after PPE. Maybe, Madeline, do you have an idea or multiple ideas of what you would like to do after studying PPE?
Well, I'm very interested in economics, and of course we'll have to wait till the economics program starts in November. But I think all I really want to do is an economic master program. Okay,
yeah. So this is one of the things you could do after studying PPE. So as we discussed in the 3rd year, you have a lot of free space to take up courses in any of the disciplines. So let's say in Madeline's case, let's see after she's taken economics with me. I hope she'll still be interested in economics. And then, so you can take courses more in economics and then be prepared to do a master's in economics or political science or philosophy or history. We also have in Utrecht a nice interdisciplinary master programs, like a master in public policy. Yeah, and there's some others. You can find those details also on the Utrecht website. Of course, you can also study a master program in other places in Utrecht. And so that's for further study, which probably most people will do after their bachelor. And then after that, what we see, or what we aspire for you, is actually pretty broad, because we're sourcing from these 4 disciplines, and so you'll be hopefully a well-rounded person, who has insights from these 4 disciplines, who has these professional, interdisciplinary, academic skills, and so hopefully you'll be able to go into a lot of directions. You could go into journalism or politics, party politics, or government, a role in government. You could become a teacher.
Into business.
Business, yeah. You could also work in a bank or as a consultant. So a big range of options, basically. And so here, just to summarize, why study PPE and why do it in Utrecht? Well, we think that the way we've designed our PPE program is really makes it a great asset on the labor market, but also for you as a person. So if you want to become interdisciplinary, if you want to become internationally oriented, a well-rounded person, and socially conscious and socially responsible, then we think PPE in history is really a great program for you. And so why specifically Utrecht? As I said, the combination that we have with history is pretty unique. And also the fact that we really work at integrating the different disciplines. The program is small scale. It's only 75 students. And this allows us to select good students and to have great interaction in smaller seminar groups of 25 and to have this community feeling. The program is relatively new, so Madeline is really our first cohort. But Utrecht University is not new, and each of the 4 disciplines has a much longer tradition in Utrecht University. So also the teachers from the different disciplines have a solid background in their discipline, do research in their own discipline, and they can invite colleagues from their different schools to give guest lectures and so on. yeah, so a solid tradition in each of the four disciplines at Utrecht. And also, interdisciplinarity is important in Utrecht more generally. So not just in PPE, where we teach in an interdisciplinary way, but also at Utrecht University, broadly speaking, interdisciplinarity is valued. It's also in research and also in teaching in other programs. Okay, so now Madeline will talk a bit about student life.
So as we said, I'm a first year PPE student. I'm Dutch, but I've lived abroad in my youth. I've lived in Malaysia, Doha, England, and in the Middle East. So that's how I think I can contribute to the PPE program. So the most positive experience for me is due to my personal background, is that I'm surrounded by English again. That's great, of course. It's a very close community. So we have pizza night where we all gather around after lectures at night to talk to each other. We watch movies together. We study together and have lunch. So it's great to be part of such a close community in PPE. We have a beautiful campus and of course our own building, which is great. So you'll always have a lot of people to talk to, and of course you can talk to the teachers a lot. So that's the most positive experience. Up till now, of course. I hope there are still many to come. And the biggest challenge will be housing. So my advice to you is to start early for looking at housing here in Utrecht. Yeah. That can be a challenge.
Yeah, it can be a challenge for some people. So I moved here from Belgium and I found a nice apartment in the Bill, which is just outside of Utrecht. Everyone has their own solution to this challenge, but it's something if you want to come to Utrecht to start on early. Okay. Talk more about Utrecht.
So I think Utrecht is great personally. We have it's a pretty small city, but it's definitely not too small. You have a lot of options on bars and good restaurants, so you have enough places to go out. And of course, Utrecht is a real student city. So when you guys go out, you'll meet enough different students from different bachelors. So that's great too. I think Utrecht is really the place to be. And of course, it's close to Den Haag and Amsterdam and so on. So you can see a lot of places in the Netherlands too, not only Utrecht.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, one of the things that I like about the facilities in Utrecht is the Olympus Sports Center. And I think as a student, you can, for 150 euros,
yes,
I think,
something like that.
Yeah, you can have a one-year plan basically, and then you can take a lot of group courses, you know, running or spinning, weightlifting. There's a gym, so there's tons of things that you can do there, and also as a staff member, you can go there. Yeah. So I think, did you want to add anything on your experience for now, or?
Well, my experience is of course very new up till now, but I think Utrecht is great personally. It's great to be a student here.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think we'll move to the Q&A. Maybe before we do that, I'll just point out the three boxes I talked about already at the beginning. So on the left, you see we have open days. So 16th and the 17th of November. You can come to the campus where we're located, just outside of city center, or also to the city center for presentations, not only on PPE, but also on other programs. In January or thereabouts, and you can check the latest information on the website, we'll have a Student for a Day program, and then you can attend part of an actual lecture. I think it will be a microeconomics lecture, actually. And then you'll also have like a small tutorial, so a seminar group experience of what that would be, and so get more information basically. And then a third date that's important is the application deadline. So that will be around March, but also those details you can find on the website. So you should make sure to start in time in your applications, collecting your diplomas or certificates, writing your motivation letter, asking people for recommendation letters. And so on. So I think we've talked enough for now, and we'll start the Q&A part of the presentation. So Rebecca is asking, what career opportunities do you get with this kind of degree? So it's a bachelor program, and that means that typically most people, as I said, will go on to a master's program. And this is important because PPE is a relatively broad program, so it gives you access to a relatively large amount of master programs, which in turn gives you access to a relatively big set of jobs. And so it's hard to answer this question. It also depends on what you want. So if you say, okay, I want to be a historian, an academic at university, for instance, I'm just saying one thing, then you could say, well, in my third year, I'm going to take history courses, then I'm going to do a history master's, history PhD, and then become an academic. But you could also say, well, I want to take more business courses, and I want to join a consulting society as an extracurricular activity, and maybe give some advice to companies in the Utrecht area. I want to do some Excel training maybe, or that you organize with students who invite someone to do this. And then you build your business background, and then you study an economics master, or you do an internship in your third year. So it's really, really broad.
It's up to you. You can fill it in however you like.
Yeah. But I think many people are interested, that I've talked to, students are interested, I think, in journalism or politics, as career politicians or as bureaucrats working in government jobs. But there's, as I said, you can also do many other things. This next question, I think, is maybe Madeline can share her experience. So Vladimir is asking, what do you mean exactly with the profile test that was mentioned in the selection requirements?
So the profile test is looking into your personalities. So they'll ask questions like how do you do with lots of homework, I think, and how do you deal with stress was a question. And it wants to give you insight on a person, or if you fit to the program. I can't remember all the questions, but it was a long time ago. But
yeah, exactly. So it's a sort of a personality test, and it gives us a way, because we have many applicants. So it's before the interview stage. It already gives us a way to see a bit what kind of person you are and whether we think you would be a good fit for the program. And really, it's important also for you, right? So you also want to know whether you're a good fit in the program. So we want you to be happy and to thrive and to contribute to the program and to take away a lot from the program. And that's why we want to see that there's a good fit. And then if we think on the basis of the initial documents that you might be a good fit, then we move on to the interview stage. And then, of course, we can get more details on who you are as a person in reality, not through a test.
So Alicia asks, is the study program suitable if you're not really interested in philosophy? Can you choose your course so that you only have politics and economics most of the time?
Okay, yeah, so this is a question about the curriculum. Well, so it is an interdisciplinary program, so we do want you to take away something from each of the 4 disciplines. We think that's really important, but that's not saying that we'll go super in detail and force you to study a lot of philosophy, for instance, or economics for that matter. So as I said, what you'll have at the very least is 2 courses in each of the disciplines in the first year, and then in the thematic packages you also get insights from the different disciplines. But I think the nice thing is, also when we're doing philosophy here, but any of the other disciplines, we're not doing them just for the sake of making you a trained philosopher or a trained economist, because we also cannot make you a fully trained person in each of those 4 disciplines, right? So we see them really as, each having their own strengths, their own methodologies, their own insights. And so I would hope if you come to Utrecht and maybe you think, well, I'm not so much into philosophy, that maybe you find that the philosophy courses actually give you an interesting, fresh, new perspective on things. So I hope that answers your question. So the second part was, can you choose so that you have most of the time? Well, I haven't done the calculation, but I guess if, in the third year you take up in your free space more economics and politics, you'll have a lot more economics or politics than you have philosophy, or the other way around if you want to do that with another discipline. So next question, Jesse is asking, is there enough time left to work part-time?
So there is definitely enough time to work part-time. We have students who work next to their studying, but it's good to keep in mind that this is an intensive program. Of course, it's a Honors program, so you will be kept busy. So it won't be very easy to do work and study at the same time. I mean, you have lots of good things to do.
Yeah. So I think it is possible. It can be somewhat of a challenge, but it could also be interesting. I don't know what type of work you're thinking about, but as we said, we also value extracurricular activities, and so basically any job, also if you're working in a supermarket, it could also help you, develop your collaboration skills or maybe your social interaction with customers or with your boss. And so it's not necessarily a bad thing that you do those things, and they can also be enriching. But of course, it's an academic program that's also on the academic side demanding, so have to balance a bit there. Let's see, let me check one of the other questions. Okay, maybe you can.
So Sylvia is asking, would this degree be suitable for me if I want a career at an international organization?
Okay, I think, yeah, definitely. So why it's interesting is that you'll have some background in each of the 4 disciplines, right? And so sometimes, for instance, people who want to work at, say, the United Nations think, okay, I should have to study political science because I have to learn how the United Nations work. And that's, of course, an interesting perspective, how the United Nations work. But at the United Nations, they also need, and I'm saying this because I talked to people who worked, I did Model United Nations when I was a student. They also need people who do their budgets. So they also need economists, or they also need lawyers and many other things. But I think what is nice about PPE is that you'll have both this political science idea and a philosophical idea. Okay, what is the United Nations? How can we think of it? What's its place? But you also have an historical perspective of how it developed, how it functions, but also economics, also some, which is also important in many policy domains. So I definitely think it would be a PPE would be a good choice for you if you're interested in working at an international organization like the United Nations or the EU. For instance, if you're interested in the EU, in the second year in the package on democracy under threat, we'll talk also about multi-level politics and how politics is shifting to some extent to international arenas and so on. So yeah. Maybe you can read the next question.
So
I think it's a simple one.
So Alicia is asking, is a PPE a suitable program if you want to become involved in management and leading positions, or should I look for business schools in that case?
Okay, good question. So I think it's good that many of you are really thinking about, okay, what you want to do later on in your life and what PPE can or cannot bring to realize that ambition. And so personally, before I did my PhD and before I became a professor, I was a management consultant. I think, with the stuff you're doing in PPE, it won't lead you straight to a business job, but it can definitely, you can build your way from there. So you can, I think, as we said, in the 3rd year, you can take economics courses, and you can, in extracurriculars, make choices that make you prepared for such a career. And then probably in a master's, you want to do something that is more business oriented. But still, I think it's nice that you have these other courses, because even if you're in business, many big companies are affected by regulations, right, from the EU or from their national governments. And so this is also something that we study. So the political science aspect of how are political decisions made can also be interesting from that in that respect. And also history, to think about, okay, how has economic history, for instance, how has the world developed? So you're also thinking about developing countries and relationship with the developed world and offshoring and many topics that are also relevant in the business world. And then you could always go to business school later on, also do an MBA, for instance, if you want. But I know that, for instance, management consulting companies are definitely hiring also people who have studied philosophy. And so if you've done PPE, you have at least some knowledge of economics, and you have you're broadly developed, you have professional skills. So you have a good basis. I think you're a well-rounded person to start from. Okay, Jasmine is asking, what would a typical day of a student look like? So
a typical day of a student would look like that in the morning you'll have the lectures. So the professor will teach you in 2 hours about a subject, so let's say politics. And in the afternoon you will have a seminar on this lecture where we'll talk about the lecture and make assignments from the lecture and discuss it. So I think that's a typical day of student. And of course, you can choose to study between the lecture or the seminar or afterwards. So
yeah, and then maybe you can have a movie night. Not every night,
maybe,
but
we definitely have movie nights, so that's a possibility. Or you could go out afterwards at nighttime.
Okay, I think there are no further questions for now that I can see. So I think we'll wrap up the session. So as I said, you'll get a link to the recording, and this will be available online, the webinar, and you can also find a lot more information and detailed information on the website. So thank you for being with us. Thank you, Madeline, for sharing your perspective as a student.
Thank you.
And we hope to see your applications and to welcome you to Utrecht next year. Thank you.
Bye.